Yo, what is up, guys? It's your boy Mateo. Welcome back to Lakeshow Digest. Lakers just had a two-game series against the Dallas Mavericks on the road. Anthony Davis is back in the lineup. Praise the basketball gods. Unfortunately, his first two games back with us are both L's. First one, we lost 115 to 110. The other, tonight's 108 to 93 loss, and a fourth quarter collapse it was. My goodness. Both of these games were pretty big roller coasters. AD has looked like a guy who's searching for his rhythm and his conditioning. The Lakers as a team have been really up and down. Some positive developments from guys like Dennis Schroeder in this stretch. I'd say there's been in this Mavs series, there's been moments where he's been stepping up as the vocal leader on the team, and at times when the team has needed a bucket, he's stepped up and given us that bucket. Some positive developments there. Guys like KCP, he scored 30 in the first game against the Mavs. Ben McLemore also had 20 tonight. So we see some positive developments from our shooters. We see some flashes from AD and Drummond as a defensive duo, some flashes of AD's athleticism that we love to see. So it's been a lot of good things, but a lot of bad things too. We look incredibly in sync at times, and other times we look like a team who a lot of guys are just playing with each other for the first time, because that is in fact the case. So to break down the game with me is the good homie Phil. You've seen him on a couple pods before. How you doing tonight, my man?
It could be better. Would have rather had the win. But otherwise not too bad.
Yeah. So I was texting you after this game because we had agreed to pod and everything, and I was just like, dude, I am so freaking annoyed right now. And you essentially told me that, like, it's all good, dude. So tell me where your head's at right now, because I'd love to hear that.
Well, there is a lot of what you were going through is kind of the point, in the sense that there's a lot of weirdness going on right now with the team. We're starting to reintegrate a superstar into a team that has, like, a lot of these guys have spent the 30 games that he was out finding new roles, because he left such a huge void. And I think we forget that it's an adjustment for the role players as much as it is for the person coming back from injury, that they need to go back into a different role, or in some cases like Dennis, a new role where he hasn't really been this year for any sustained period of time. So that has been making things kind of weird. And also I saw a lot of experimentation. We talked about this the last time I was on the pod with you, from Vogel, both in terms of lineups and tactics.
Mm-hmm.
In this game, for instance, he responded to last game by just double teaming Luka every time he crossed the court in the first half, almost.
And it looked pretty good at times.
Yeah, and that led to a lot of really, a lot of turnovers, a lot of bad shots. But in the second half, when Rick Carlisle came back and readjusted, and had Luka kind of dragging out some of these things and creating new passing lanes, Vogel didn't just immediately switch it up. He let it play out for a little bit, and then there was that period in the third quarter where they went back to a drop and a little bit got some better results when they had bigger personnel to put on Powell in that pick and roll.
Mm-hmm.
And then they went back to the doubling late in the game and got picked apart by Luka, basically. So I really do think that he is switching up all of these coverages because he wants to see what specific lineups can do against what kind of personnel. And I saw a lot of that tonight, and it doesn't always make for fun watching, but I think it will pay dividends down the line.
Certainly. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Phil. It seems like he's putting guys in situations to see how they respond and what they can do. It reminds me of how Phil, when shit kind of got rocky, he wouldn't always call a timeout. And growing up watching Laker games with my dad was always like, "Call a fucking timeout, Phil." He'll never call that timeout.
Dude gave me so much heartburn because he didn't care. I think the first, I want to say it was 2008, maybe, Western Conference Finals against the Spurs, game one, they were down by like 20, 25 points, I want to say, in the third quarter of that game.
Mm-hmm.
And Phil would not call the damn timeout. And, I'm a teenager throwing shit at the TV. Like, call the timeout, Phil, come on. And then, in the fourth quarter, he found the lineup that figured it out, and Kobe went nuts, and they won the game and swept the Spurs for the whole series.
Mm-hmm.
But I know exactly what you're talking about. And I don't know that it's necessarily like doing that in a Western Conference Finals against the defending champion takes a little bit more balls than it does to do it in the regular season.
I was gonna say, yeah, if things start
But
getting experimental in the playoffs too, that'll be a different situation.
it's the same kind of phenomenon, and I am heartened by the fact that Vogel immediately made the adjustment from the last game, and it was incredibly effective. And he made Dallas make the extra adjustment, and then he was gathering data on how he can counter the counter. So if he faces that kind of coverage in the playoffs, or if he faces that kind of player, or if we actually end up seeing Dallas somehow, he's got a little bit more of that information than he did before. And I think that that's the kind of intentional loss, almost like a sacrifice in a chess game. Like you're giving up points per possession in exchange for information that's more useful later. And I think it pays dividends.
Yeah, I was kind of okay with how they decided to go out, because yeah, let's just go back through the game. The first quarter was kind of up and down. Looking through my notes here, but we somehow come out on top. In the end of that, we end up the first by up a couple points. Let's see. Yeah, second quarter, that's when we start getting really good with Luka. We start rolling out the traps on him. Dude was in jail. I was loving it. I was just loving seeing him struggle against our defense like that. We run away with a 10-point lead, end of the half, come back out in the third quarter, and then I think we did a little bit more of that trapping on him. We even saw some Anthony Davis on Luka, and if I recall, he did okay. You know, he wasn't getting buckets on AD really. But then the middle of that, they just find a way to get the teammates involved. Luka wasn't necessarily scoring, but he got guys like Dorian Finney-Smith, and he got Dwight fucking Powell, who I will curse his name because that guy was pissing me off so much tonight. He was getting guys like that involved. And then they tie it up into the third. Fourth quarter comes, and they just keep that momentum going. And we decided we're going to get back in this game by shooting threes, because every time we tried going in the paint, that shit was packed. Like all 4 or 5 guys collapsed. And we were getting good looks, man. I mean, we were getting really clean looks. Frank remarked that after the game, that these were clean looks that we just missed. AD in particular, I'm okay. He went like 5 of 19 tonight. And we know he's a much better shooter than that. We know he's coming off a 2-month break. He's got to get his legs back under him. He was hitting the front rim on a lot of those shots. I'm totally okay with AD having a game like this. You know, get it out of your system. I've seen what a dead-eye shooter you can be, AD. So if you need to get your reps up now, fucking do it. Like, fire away. So even though these misses were kind of bad, I was still like, it's okay, AD. Like, I got a long leash for you right now. The shooting from AD and from Keith too. Keith was 2 of 11 for tonight, and I could expect him to shoot better than that. He just kind of had an off night. We just want to get back in this game by shooting threes, and I think the guy Vogel knows that we're not the best 3-point shooters, but getting guys reps seems to be an important thing. So he was putting them in a situation where they had to shoot their way out of it with a 3. If that pays dividends in the playoffs, fantastic. That seems to be what he's going for, though, man. What do you think? It seems like just getting those reps in the regular season, that seems to be his MO.
Yeah. With respect to Markieff, I think he's had a little bit of a subpar shooting season based on what I was expecting, based on what he did last year. He had a hot streak for a couple of weeks there while Anthony Davis was out toward the end, but this has kind of been a return to earth for him. And I wouldn't be surprised if he sees himself squeezed a little bit more toward the margins of the rotation the way he was at the beginning of the year. Because once LeBron gets back, he's going to eat a lot of those minutes. They're not going to come from Kuzma very much because he's been doing too many things. And Morris isn't quite big enough to really guard guards. So the opportunity for him to be on the floor if he's not making those shots is going to shrink. I don't really mind. I'm with you. I don't mind Anthony Davis missing a lot of shots. I want him to take a lot of shots because even beyond the conditioning thing, which I'm sure is very real, just getting used to the speed of an NBA game while you're in it and the environment of the arena and all of the people there, like it's a very different sensory experience that he hasn't had in a while. And every little thing can affect you. So I'm not surprised that he's showing a little bit of rust, but I'm not worried about what he's going to produce in the playoffs.
Yeah, with Keith, I was also thinking the same thing. We saw him go on a really good shooting streak, particularly after the All-Star break, and even once LeBron went down, he kind of held the ship together. He was scoring like over 15 points a game for us. He was looking really good, but when the big guys get back, that role's going to change, and then it's hard to expect him to maintain that kind of consistent shooting if his minutes aren't going to be consistent. Our big rotation is the big question mark right now, and Frank's experiments are making it a more frustrating experience for Laker fans. I see a lot of people being like, let's nail down our center rotation. What I want to see is I just want to see Trez at the 4, Mark at the 5. Please, Frank, if you want to experiment, roll it out now. This is the regular season. You did mention it to the reporters in the past that you want to maybe Trez at the 4, Mark at the 5. Now's the time. That's one thing I'd like to see. I think that's got pretty good offensive potential. What do you think? Defensive, though, I'm not really sure. But offensive, I like it.
Offensive, it's great. And defensive, I think it serves to cover up the worst tendencies of both players, I think, if they're both on the floor. Because neither of them are monstrously versatile defenders, Mark, at least not anymore. But Trez is always at his best defensively when he's in aggressive coverages. Mm-hmm. And Mark is at his best when he can be far away from the ball at the rim, read the play, and have time to get to his spot. So I think that there's a lot of potential there on both ends for the sort of unique deficiencies of those players fitting together in a way that tends to mitigate them. My personal opinion for why we haven't really seen much of that, I think Frank's holding it in the bag. I think he knows what he's got, and I think he's going to unleash that on some poor, unsuspecting bench lineup in the playoffs, and all of a sudden they're going to be down by 20 points.
Boy, I would love to see that shit. Oh my God. We don't see a Mark and Trez lineup all year. And then we let some first round opponent get some confidence. And we're like, all right, you guys are going home. We're putting this in the bag. We're running out that Mark and Trez lineup.
Yeah. I am choosing to have that faith. I'll be disappointed if it doesn't happen. But, I always just go back to the fact Frank Vogel is a better basketball mind than I am. And if this seems this like obviously good to me and I trust my own opinion, then I trust him to have figured that out.
I think I hold the same opinion, but I think of even coaches in general. There's a reason they're getting paid millions of dollars and at the top of the basketball coaching field right now. Even though some shit might seem idiotic at times, I still think even the worst coach, their basketball knowledge puts 99.9%. 0.999% of fans, under the table. Maybe that's the Joker card, dude. I would love to see that from whipped out in like a first or second round series. Let's focus on AD though. How would you compare his first game to his second? So his first game, 17 minutes. I don't have the stats, but he shot something like 2 of 10. I think he had like maybe less than 10 points, a few rebounds. And this one, I do have these stats. He shoots, let's see, Anthony Davis, 17 points, 5 of 18, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, no blocks. So those are the counting stats. But what do you think of what you saw from him comparing first to second outing?
I saw a significant increase in comfort from the first to the second game myself. Offensively, he was just a lot more aggressive, especially around the basket. The first game, we saw a lot more pull-up jumpers and mid-range stuff and face-up game, which is sort of what you'd expect to see from someone who's coming back from an injury and isn't quite comfortable on it yet. They're still a little bit nervous about re-injury. I saw a lot less of that in this game. He was barreling toward the rim a little bit more. He was getting reckless the way he does and falling over, going after plays. And defensively, he moved around a lot better. I remember vividly, I think, from the second quarter, a play where he was guarding Luka in isolation. He was guarding Luka in isolation, some 30 feet for the basket, and Luka didn't get anything.
That's the Anthony Davis I know, man. Throw him on
he had to pull it back and it clanked off the back of the rim. He clearly didn't have a good eye on the basket. So seeing flashes of that makes me a lot more comfortable that the more reps he gets in, the more that guy's coming back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those few sequences where he was defending Luka, that great athletic, that scoop layup where he goes up and then he just got to pull a scoop, and then he's just doing things that you're not going to see 7-footers do, and that's from growing up as a guard and learning that skill set. That story we all know. Yeah, dude, Anthony Davis. I'm glad he took those shots. I'm glad he's trying to get back in his rhythm. Not gonna get too mad at it. The defense was what was most promising to me. I was glad to see move around, like you said, cover Luka. I was glad to see that Davis and Drummond tandem, because there are certain times where we were covering Luka pretty well with those traps, but then he would just throw it out of nowhere, just hoping it would land in his teammate's hand. And a lot of times there'd be Drummond's arm right there to steal it, or AD's arm right there to steal it. So that was another promising thing from the guys, man.
And Drummond gets a lot of flack for some of his defensive lapses, and those are definitely there. But I do think that his length and activity especially showed in this game, because when you've got guys on the front line who are going to be LeBron James and Anthony Davis and Dennis Schroeder, who are these like really, really good defenders for what they're being asked to do, having a guy like Andre Drummond, who all he has to do is close that gap a little bit faster than your average NBA big would. And the offensive scheme is going to fall apart because those windows are so small. And the little bit of edge that he brings in terms of athleticism and activity at that back line that gives AD the freedom to be the roamer and the wrecking ball defensively that he prefers to be is going to pay dividends.
Mm-hmm. I'm just really excited to see how LeBron and Drummond can play together too, man, because we've seen very clearly Drummond doesn't have the best hands, whether it comes to catching a bounce pass in the post or even going up for an alley-oop that seems pretty wide open. He'll bobble it somehow. But I'm excited for a guy like LeBron to get him those accurate passes on a more consistent basis.
And that's just such a friggin' huge front line. Just like a bunch of big, strong dudes who are going to attack the rim and bully you and push you around. It's intimidating.
Yeah, it's like a similar situation last year where you have a guy like Dwight Howard filling in that garbage man rebounder role. I mean, Drummond's even more overqualified now at this point in his career, 27, and just his ability to get rebounds. If he can just play his role, I'm still very high on his potential with the team, man. And the lineups of the other team will roll out, and how he fares against them will determine if he gets these playoff minutes that I'm sure he wants. But I do trust Frank to go with the right guy when we need it. Still very high on Drummond, still very high on this Lakeshow, man. Want to look ahead to the schedule a bit, though. So we got 12 games left in the season, man. Our next 4 are very winnable. So we got the Magic on Monday, the Wizards on Wednesday, Kings on Friday, and Raptors Sunday. The Kings won't have De'Aaron Fox, so you think we could go 4-0? I mean, that's pretty possible to me.
It's very possible. I think at least 3-1. Maybe they drop one out of negligence, or someone misses a game for rest or whatever. But I think
3-1's got to be the minimum.
Yeah, the way that Dennis has really stepped into an active leadership role in the absence of LeBron and AD is something that I think is going to be really important when it comes to reintegrating everyone, and also giving them that confidence in him come playoff time. I saw Anthony Davis and Dennis having a lot of really intense, like, tactical conversations on the bench during this game, during cutaway shots, where Anthony Davis is explaining, no, do it like this, or there's a little bit of chemistry that still needs to be worked out there because they've played so few games together. But there's no better set of opponents right now to be working through that process against than those teams. And this team has been really, really good at beating the teams they're supposed to this year, even without LeBron and Anthony Davis. It's been the higher class competition when they haven't had all of their big guys that have given them trouble.
Yeah, thanks for bringing up Dennis because he's been one of the really big bright spots during this stretch. Yet, when I think you might have been on the pod, but when LeBron first went down, and it was just like, oh boy, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna score? How are we gonna win games? I was just thinking of what I would want to see from players. I wanted to see, Kuzma step up as a, more reliable scorer. We've gotten some games of that. I wanted to see Caruso, step up as a distributor. We've gotten little flashes of that. His passing become a little bit more reliable in certain situations. But I wanted to see Dennis most of all step up as a Chris Paul sort of type. Of course, I'd love for him to become Chris Paul, but I'd love to see him. I wanted to see him step up as a more reliable facilitator, a guy to rally the troops and just be our vocal leader. And in these last two games, especially, we've really seen that. So thanks for bringing up Dennis about that, man. Dennis has really shown some good shit. Even in
And
this,
can I illustrate that with one specific point? Because
yeah,
I noticed something really interesting during the game today. Last season and for most of this season, when they post Anthony Davis up on the left block, usually the action that they get to get him that entry pass is just a basic cross screen across the lane. What they were doing, and I saw this, I want to say 2 or 3 times at least today, is instead of doing that cross screen to get Anthony Davis into a post up, they did a screen and roll with him and Dennis Schroeder and an empty corner on one side of the court and just rescreened the screen in order to open up that pass for AD into the post. And that's something that has eliminated a lot of the potential help defense counters that made AD a little bit less efficient in the post than fans would have liked last year. And it's a very subtle illustration of the stuff that Dennis Schroeder can do reliably that guys like Avery Bradley and Alex Caruso can't, because he is such a threat with his speed off of that screen that you have to make the adjustments that give Anthony Davis that entry pass angle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something I didn't exactly pick up, but good on you for picking that up. I just have in my freaking notes, like in the fourth quarter, just like Dennis, all caps. I think that was when he got the dunk.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was one.
And THT had a highlight reel dunk shortly before that too. Splitting a double team. They both really got
That
me
was
out of
weird.
my chair
The way he
personally.
split that double team reminded me of Kobe, dude. When Kobe used to just push the ball out way in front of him, but he kind of squeak through the double. Yeah, THT kind of did that there. That was our first points of the fourth quarter. I always love seeing THT get a dunk like that, man. He always makes him look so good.
And he does. There's a lot of the time that he's on the floor that is close but not quite, or kind of frustrating. And then there are these things that he does that just make you blink a couple of times. Like, holy shit, I didn't know this kid could do that. And it's a lot of us have seen those kinds of flashes before, and those players are usually really good. So I keep hyping up Horton Tucker, but he has already shown that he can do things that not a lot of players, even in the NBA, can do. And the stuff that he is not great at right now is stuff that he can be taught. And he's got great teachers around him. So I'm very high on where he's going to end up.
I hope he stays with us a long time, and I hope Phil Handy stays with us a long time, man, because that man can develop some guys. That other play with he had Willie Cauley-Stein guarding him, and he shook him so bad. Do you remember that? Willie's knees kind of buckled, and he almost fell over. But THT like tried to dive a little more, but there were like 4 Mavs in the paint, and he couldn't do anything, so he had to pass it out. But he had him shook, so I was very happy about that play, man. Yeah, he was one of the good bright spots of this game. Dennis, that moment where he got that dunk, and then the very next play that we get back on offense, he drives again, and I think they kind of defend him a little bit more. But he passes it off to maybe Kuzma, who gets the dunk. And that's when I started feeling good about the game again. But then, of course, the Luka Dwight Powell pick and roll became fucking Stockton and Malone of 2021, and that was our downfall.
And Luka does that thing where he'll occasionally just make shots he has no business making. And that's always irritating playing against him, but it's fun as a fan of the game to watch a guy who just has the touch to do those ridiculous shots.
Mhm.
And they bounce around 4 or 5 times and then drop in by accident, or they rim out and fly 10 feet back up in the air and then drop through. Damn it, it's irritating, but he's good at basketball.
I know that one where Dennis was guarding him really closely, and I think it was to put the game up 10. It was to essentially seal it. It was one of those shots where Jamal Murray hit one of those against us in the playoffs, where like the opposing team rallies and they get up 10, and the pressure's not totally on them to make this very shot in this possession, but the guy kind of slows it down. He dribbles, he phases up his defender. He's trying to stunt on him essentially, and it's like, oh, of course he's going to make this. Like, I just get this feeling that the guy's going to make it. And of course, when he got on the wing right there, he just threw that shit up deep as hell, drained, and I'm like, yeah, that's game. Oh well.
Yeah, whenever Luka in isolation is always, or Luka in a screen and roll, frankly, is always just a clinching moment. Because and this is something that I see in LeBron, or saw in LeBron when he was not a Laker playing against him. Like, he's smarter than me reading those things. He sees it before I see it. So I'm always very nervous about what he's about to pull.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always a feeling that I get from Luka. I never feel comfortable when he has the ball. It's the same feeling I get when Steph has the ball, and that's about as high a compliment I can pay Luka.
Yeah, man. That at the end, just when they had that pick and roll of doom on us, I mean, Dwight Howard finished with like 25 points. That the most annoying things about this game was the officiating in the first game was pretty horrendous. They had that 36-17 free throw advantage, and so I think me and a lot of other Laker fans were, I feel like, more sensitive to shitty calls should they occurred. We got some calls, and they didn't always go for the Mavs baits, because Luka definitely tried to bait them into some stuff, but Luka and just Josh Powell, Cauley Stein, I mean, a lot of those guys flopped, dude. So that was just pissing me off, and it seemed like they were really getting the call most of the time. What do you think of them in terms of their flopping? I think like, I don't know, maybe Luka's setting a culture of flopping there, in my opinion.
Well, it's hard for me to blame players as long as it's rewarded. So I see stuff like that as an officiating problem. I think the NBA has an officiating problem the last couple of years, as they've seen the more experienced people age out, and they've been bringing in a newer generation with something to prove to establish stars of referees. I mean, it's almost as though there's a power struggle going on within the game.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where I think the sort of manipulative aspect, that and frankly vagueness in the rules, and a gross deficiency in the amount of physicality that's allowed on the perimeter versus around the paint, which is my personal soapbox to get on. I love complaining about that.
Yeah, I kind of can't fault them too if that's going to be in the rule. But one thing I do hope they change, and I think they're going to take an official look at it, is when guys throw themselves into a defender when they're at the 3-point arc and they're trying to draw that foul for 3 shots. A lot of guys will clearly throw themselves into the defender. And you just can't reward that, man. Nobody likes that shit. I mean,
the thing that kills me even more than that is when the defender flies by and they feel the wind and just fall over.
Which happened too, so you remember that play in this game?
Yeah, but like it's
Awesome,
as though they've just been like bowled over by Shaq, the way they react. And it's like, dude, even if he touched you, I know he didn't make you do that.
I know.
I hate seeing the theatrics of that rewarded, and I don't think that it improves the product at all. It makes it a frustrating game to watch, because even a casual fan looking at that is gonna like scoff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not a foul. That's BS. This is a soft league, and it's hard to argue with that evaluation of how the perimeter is called in the NBA right now.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something they got to change. Caruso did have that play, I think it was Brunson shooting, where he goes up, he makes a big jump to contest him. He doesn't touch him. Maybe his shorts graze him, but of course Brunson, if that was Brunson, he falls down. He gets the 3-shot call, and I was just livid, dude. I was ready to fucking, I don't know, man.
Well,
That was
and then under the paint, you've got people who are taking elbows, going for rebounds, or getting in their whole arm moved or hit, and you don't get the call because it's around the basket. And that, to me, that is what really has forced the game out into the perimeter, and I think elevated the 3-point shots a little bit beyond what they would otherwise optimally be. Is just the level of physicality is so different that it's pushing up the degree of difficulty on what would be the more efficient shots by the rim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That one play where Drummond was ready to square up with Finney Smith. I mean, he was ready to square up because Finney Smith freaking jumped over his back and like pushed him over. Ref didn't call a foul or anything though, so that's when they got in their little tussle.
Yeah,
But
the memes are real, but it's absolutely preposterous that play gets called as a double technical, and that's it. Like I don't understand what the league is trying to incentivize with that, or what the refs are trying to incentivize. Like, you don't give a guy a technical for being pissed off that someone else made a bad play on him. That's silly. It's like when they make it worse by giving a technical to a coach who's complaining about a bad call. Like if the call's the wrong call, don't keep digging the hole by penalizing someone for being mad about your last mistake. And that's
it's a power dynamic, like you said, man. I mean, it really comes down to power and a ref wanting to assert their control over the game, versus letting that shit get out of hand. Yeah, it really comes down to power a lot of times, dude. But going back to the Lakers, we got these next 4. I feel they're very winnable. Like we said, I'd like to see them go 3-1 at least. Then we got Nuggets and Clippers. We were talking before we started recording, but May 3rd, they tell us today that LeBron's going to be back in a week. So that's a little over a week from now. I'm probably going to expect him to be back that Nuggets game, May 3rd, but that's just me speculating, nothing official. And then we got Nuggets, Clippers to wrap it up. Last 6 games, Blazers, Suns, Knicks, Rockets, Pacers, and Pelicans. So those are our 12. Some tougher opponents in there. I'm so used to looking at the schedule and seeing like, oh, Knicks, that's a fucking win. But nah, man, that's going to be a fight now, right?
not with the Julius Randle Knicks.
Not with the Julius Randle show in town, no sir. But yeah, I'm glad that the Knicks are a little more competitive because I do think the NBA is better when Knicks got something to smile about,
And it's a team that Knicks fans can love.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not very flashy. They're a hard-nosed, grinded-out team, and they've been through a bad couple decades as a franchise. So that, like, they're not used to seeing guys go for 48 minutes as hard as they can go on the Knicks. And that's what this team is doing. And it's easy to fall in love with guys who give that kind of effort.
That's a Thibodeau defensive team, man. It's crazy how he shows up and just revolutionizes and just empowers the shit out of guys like that. I mean, did it really happen with the Timberwolves though? I mean, it didn't really turn, that team into, well, with Jimmy Butler, they were pretty good in stretches. But I'm glad to see
they had some injury problems during the 1 year. I think they were pretty good and maybe had a shot to win a series. So the stars just weren't there for him in Minnesota, I don't think.
That's right. Yeah, I forgot about the injury problems. But super glad to see Randall flourish. We talked about that last time. We love that guy. Yeah, Lakers got 10 games, man. I mean, 12 games. And LeBron should be coming back soon. What a frustrating ass loss. I mean, the officials, all that flopping, just letting Josh Powell turn into freaking. I don't even want to like give him like a star player comparison. I don't want to flatter him that much. It was just it's going to be a learning experience. You got any final thoughts, man?
Yeah, as much as I want to like kick him in the groin, hats off to Josh Powell. He had a great game.
Yeah.
Um,
Is it Dwight Powell or Josh? I think it's Dwight because I kept
oh,
calling him Josh Powell in my head too.
yeah, I was doing it. It is Dwight Powell. You're right. I was thinking of Josh, but he found his right spots. He made sure to go up and get it when Luka trusted him to finish the lobs. He was sort of the best version of himself today. So, you know, go home and pop a bottle. Dwight Powell, you had a good game.
Have yourself a good one. Pour one
Yeah.
out for yourself. Now let's just call him Josh Powell from now on. Let's just let's just mildly disrespect him. I'd like to refer to him as Josh Powell. Yeah, man, this was fun as always. Looking forward to having you back on soon.
Oh, sure thing, man.
All right, take care, man. Later.